In 1862, Prince Edward VII, then Prince of Wales and later King of England, decided to have lunch with his companions inside one of the coffins of the Serapeum of Saqqara. But why would anyone do that? The Serapeum is one of the strangest underground monuments in Egypt, a vast network of tunnels carved directly into the rock, containing 24 enormous stone coffins, some weighing close to 100 tons. And the real mystery is not simply what these coffins are, it is how they got there. The story begins almost 2,000 years ago, in the 1st century AD. The Greek historian Strabo described an underground Egyptian temple surrounded by sand dunes, with an avenue of sphinxes leading to it, some buried almost completely beneath the sand. Centuries later, French archaeologist Auguste Mariette found those very sphinxes, and in 1851, after a year of excavation, he discovered what we now call the Serapeum. Beneath Saqqara was a huge underground complex containing 24 gigantic stone coffins carved from hard stones such as granite, syenite, and diorite. The body of one coffin could weigh around 70 tons. Its lid could weigh another 30. Nearly 100 tons of stone. The conventional explanation is that these were the burial coffins of the sacred Apis bulls. Apis was no ordinary bull. It had to meet a very specific set of signs. It was supposed to be black, with distinctive white markings, a particular tail, and other characteristics that identified it as the sacred animal. When an Apis bull died, it was mummified and supposedly placed in one of these enormous coffins. Ancient accounts even describe elaborate rituals surrounding the living animal. When a newly born Apis was found, the people stopped mourning. The calf was kept at Nilopolis for 40 days, after which a barge with a gilded skull carried it to the Temple of Ptah at Memphis. For the next 40 days, only women were allowed to look at the Apis, who revealed their generative parts to it. But at all other times, women were forbidden in its presence. It sounds like a complete explanation, except for one problem. The giant coffins were empty. Mariette found the lids of almost all of them open and concluded that they had been robbed. But even that explanation leaves questions. Why were the nearby chambers, where human and animal remains and even gold funerary objects were found, not similarly empty? And why was one enormous coffin left sealed when Mariette and his workers could not open it? He used dynamite to break into it, and inside, nothing. No Apis mummy. In fact, no Apis mummy was found inside any of the 24 giant granite coffins of the Great Gallery. The Apis-related remains discovered by Mariette were found in the Lesser Gallery, along with human remains, wooden coffins, statues, and funerary objects. So the official explanation may be possible, but it does not answer every question. And then things get much more interesting. The Great Gallery stretches for roughly 300 meters. Its passages are remarkably straight, extremely dark, and carved directly into solid rock. There is no room here for simple explanations involving huge crowds of workers pulling giant stones wherever they wanted. Look at the entrance. It is only about 3.2 meters wide. The coffins had to enter lengthwise. The chambers themselves are narrow, and the coffins were even lowered about 1.5 meters below floor level. A 70-ton coffin would theoretically require hundreds of people to move, but where would hundreds of workers stand inside these narrow passages? And how would they maneuver such an enormous object into a precisely prepared recess? At the pyramids, we can talk about ramps, ropes, and SLEDGES. But inside the Serapeum, the geometry itself becomes the problem. So the question is not simply, how did they carve the coffin? It is, how did they transport a nearly 100-ton object into this space and position it with such precision? Today, moving enormous weights through confined spaces requires heavy industrial machinery. So what did the ancient builders have? This question became particularly interesting to British engineer Christopher Dunn. Dunn spent years working with industrial machinery, metal cutting, engines, lasers, and precision manufacturing. In 2010, he published Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, arguing that some Egyptian monuments display a level of engineering precision that is difficult to explain, using only the tools normally associated with ancient Egypt. His argument was not that aliens built the monuments. His argument was that the builders were the ancient Egyptians, but that we may not fully understand the technology they used. Dunn applied a highly accurate square to the internal corners of a serapeum coffin and used a powerful light to look for gaps. Almost no light passed through. The internal corners appeared remarkably close to a perfect 90 degrees, and the surfaces were extraordinarily smooth and polished. But there is another problem. Where are the tools capable of producing this? Ancient Egyptian museums contain saws, chisels, hammers, wooden and basalt measuring tools, and other implements. These tools certainly demonstrate sophisticated craftsmanship, but can the known toolkits alone explain the production of a single granite coffin weighing tens of tons, with such precise internal geometry and polished surfaces? And yet ancient Egypt somehow managed to bring enormous blocks from distant quarries and place them inside one of the most confined underground complexes in Egypt. So we are left with a strange picture. 20 for gigantic granite coffins. No mummies inside them, remarkable internal precision, extremely narrow underground passages. And a transportation problem that is difficult even to visualize. Were they really simply coffins for Apis bulls? Perhaps, but if so, why such extraordinary precision? Why bring blocks weighing close to 100 tons from distant quarries? Why create enormous containers several times larger than the animal itself? And where are the funerary inscriptions and prayers we might expect? Maybe we are looking at these objects through the wrong lens. Imagine someone from the Middle Ages suddenly entering our world and seeing a refrigerator for the first time. He might simply call it a box. He would have no idea what it was actually designed to do. Perhaps we are doing something similar with the serapeum. We see a massive stone box with a lid, and we call it a coffin, but that name may tell us more about what we think it is than what it actually was, and perhaps that is the real mystery beneath Saqqara. Not how to explain the box, but why someone went to such extraordinary